All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to the Transportation Policy Board meeting of August 2024. Before we start, just to let you know that the chair and vice chair are not going to be joining this meeting today. So I think the first thing we do is, before we do anything else, we have to elect a chair for this meeting.
I move to elect Alderman Miller as our chair today.
Debate that. Thank you. I want a speech.
You have to call her. Somebody has to call her. I'll be glad. All in favor?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for accepting the nomination.
Can we please do the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, Mr. Caldwell, if you'll do roll call.
All right, so starting the roll call with the Chair Oscar Leeser, Vice Chair Cesar Blanco, Representative Chris Canales, Mayor Ramon Cano, Senator Joseph Cervantes, Representative Rudy Cruz, Mayor Miguel Chacon, Aaron Chavarria, Representative Mayor Gonzalez, Representative Cassandra Hernandez, Yvette Hernandez, Commissioner Ileana Holguin, Representative Willie Madrid, Chair Walter Miller, Representative Joe Moody, Representative Eddie Morales, Mo Mobed, Mayor Diana Murillo, Representative Claudia Ordaz, Representative Lino Ortega, Norma Palacios, Mayor Javier Perea, Mayor Rachel Quintana, Tony Nevares, Representative Isabel Salcido, Judge Ricardo Samaniego,
Yes, here.
Ellen Smythe, Mayor Anthony Turner, Tomas Trevino, and City Manager Terry Weston. Right.
Mr. Caldwell, please let the record show that Representative Canales joined us.
Oh,
Give me a call.
I'm good. Excellent. Thank you. So we do have one.
Okay, so we can go to open comment. No open comment, so we can go to item number 1, please.
All right. All right. So starting with the action items, item 1 is consider approval of the minutes of the July 19, 2024 TPB meeting.
Do I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Right. All right. Item number 2 is consider authorizing the executive director to sign a letter of support for the University of Texas at El Paso UTEP application for the federal fiscal year 2024 Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program for the safety roadmaps in El Paso project. And we have Professor Chen Wang from UTEP with a presentation. Do we have that, Harrison?
Yes.
Thank you.
Morning.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yeah.
So well, we get the PowerPoint just as a refresher for all of you. The Safe Streets for All is a federal program And we actually, as an NPO, we received a grant, we applied and received a grant, and we're kicking off that grant, but that is to develop a safety action plan for the region. So it's more of a traditional action plan that will cover a lot of things. And one of the first questions I had for Professor Wang was, if we're already doing one, why is this a complement, or why are we not overlapping? So I'll let him explain.
Sure. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's nice to be here, like in the Sun City. Yeah. So I moved to El Paso last year from the very northern part, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yeah, so it's very nice to be here. It's really warm. Yeah. And that's why it's called Sun City, right? We even have a bank called like Sunflower Bank over there. Yeah. So before that, I studied in Canada. So this is like a big change for me in terms of the climate. But I really enjoy like outdoor activities, especially hiking. So I feel like this is a perfect place. Yeah, and also I'm learning Spanish, so this is also a perfect place to learn Spanish. So that's a little bit background about me. So so we are trying to submit like an application for SSA4 program, the Safe Streets for All program for USDOT. So what we are trying to do here is to leverage emerging technologies, especially like techniques from machine learning to help like improve safety for the city. Because can you go to the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Yeah, so after I moved here, so first of all, like I work on like control systems and transportation systems. So after like moving here, I noticed that there's like a high like rate of fatalities and serious like injuries here in this city. So I did some like background like research. So it looks like we have about 12.37 fatalities and serious injuries per 100,000 people. So that's way above the national average, and it's almost twice the average of Texas. So I thought like it would be like useful to do something here to help improve the safety of the city. And based on this data, like we figure out that most of the, even though like El Paso is a car-dependent city, but many of the fatalities and the serious injuries are actually related to, for example, like pedestrians, motorcyclists. So those are called like variable road users, even though they only account for a small number of like roadway users here, but they are disproportionately impacted by fatalities and serious injuries in this city. So unfortunately, like when we deal with like traffic safety, and we have to depend on real world data. Unfortunately, there is a very limited amount of data available for each city. So what I have been thinking is that how about we use some techniques to get data from other cities that could be applicable for the city of El Paso. So that's called transfer learning. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so traditionally when researchers talk about safety analysis, so they mainly focus on passive safety analysis. So for example, for El Paso, you just get the data from El Paso and then do analysis. However, as I mentioned earlier, so that data is very limited for every individual city. So but what we can do is that we can leverage the most recent concept called active like safety analysis. So basically, it's based on the data from multiple cities that have similar characteristics to the city that's of interest. For example, in this case, El Paso. So we can figure out a series of characteristics from other cities that are similar to this city, and then we can leverage the safety data from those cities to help us build a machine learning model that can be tuned in order to be applied specifically for the city of El Paso. That's the first phase, which is to identify cities, potential cities with similar characteristics. And then we can carry out data fusion to screen for the entire network of a city. So that includes multiple cities that have been identified in the first phase. So after this, next slide please. So after this, we can train machine learning models using the data not only from El Paso, but also from other cities that we have identified in the first phase. So that's why we can get new knowledge about the potential causes for for example, traffic crashes and some other safety issues. And then we can input the real world data from our parcel into that model to see if we implement any safety measures, how can that improve traffic? Because if you simply like modify any, like for example, structure or let's say road signage for the city, that's costly before you do analysis. So in this way, we can avoid like directly investing in improving the city. Instead, we can use this model to see whether or not any changes we make can actually improve safety for the city and how much that can improve. And then we can do cost-benefit analysis to see if it's beneficial to do that. So that helps us to avoid like directly investing money without doing any analysis. And the last phase is to develop a comprehensive safety plan based on what we have achieved in the third phase. So for example, we can test if we improve like road signage or speed limits or optimize traffic signals, how can we actually, how much benefit we can get from those investments. So that would be very helpful and insightful for policymakers, especially for a city. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then the last phase is, so the last step is to just do the analysis. So because the city is relatively large, so what we can do is that we can select certain locations for testing of the model that we have developed in phase 3. So yeah, these are just some representative like locations. These are the locations of the city that have that have the most dangerous, like have the most highest fatalities and serious injuries. So, and of course, this model is flexible. You can input the data for any location of the city. So these just are some of the representative locations. And then eventually we hope to inform decision makers, especially like, for example, a city, to make more beneficial and wise investments in terms of improving traffic safety. And this can be incorporated into the work that Paso MPO is doing, also the city of El Paso is doing, and yeah, we'll also collaborate with the city of El Paso and another university, Texas A&M University, to work on this project, specifically TTI, yeah, Texas Transportation Institute. Yeah, any questions? I'm happy to answer the questions if you have. Yeah.
I had one question. I just never did see the definition on your first slide. The second slide, you had the acronym KSI.
Yeah, exactly. That's called killed and seriously injured. KSI, killed and seriously injured. Yeah, that's a kind of like a metric to quantify the level of safety.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. It's basically fatalities and serious injuries. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
Are there further questions? Do I have a approval for the, or a motion to approve? To approve. The recommendation.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, nice to meet everyone.
Second.
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
So just a note on that one, all of the safety action plans that are being developed here in the region, the city did their Vision Zero, TxDOT has their own plan. I mean, we're bringing everything together, and this is another example of how all these different plans need to feed into each other to make it better. But I think this is a really, really cool, approach, and we're certainly gonna learn a lot from that. So we will work together with them as they develop their plan. Hopefully, they'll get the grant and see how we can apply all these artificial intelligence, tools. All right, so then moving on to item number 3, consider approval of amendments to the Regional Mobility Strategy RMS 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, amended RMS 2050 MTP, RMS 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program TIP, and RMS 2025 to 2028 TIP for the following New Mexico projects. 2A, Program the Calle Morocco Sidewalk Improvements Construction Project and the RMS 2025-2028 TIP using $103,249 of New Mexico TAP L in fiscal year 2025. B, program the Southern Park Solar Bus Charges Project using $493,393 of STPL, the Surface Transportation Program, Large Urban funds in fiscal year 2025. C, program the McCombs Multi-Use Trail Project using $487,400 of STPL funds in fiscal year 2025. And D, program the Amparo Road Multi-Use Trail Project using $296,200 of STPL funds in fiscal year 2025. So Ann Gallante will take over.
Good morning, Chair and board members. Ann Gallante, El Paso MPO, if I could get the slides for this one. All right, so this item is the quarterly amendments for the New Mexico portion of our MPO that will be going in the September New Mexico STIP revision that have been brought to our attention. One of these is something that had been programmed for 2024, but the funds need to be moved to 2025 for that project, and the rest of them are new projects that came about as a result of an ad hoc committee that was created amongst TPAC members to decide how to program some unobligated funding balances. These funds had previously been advertised in project calls, but we didn't have takers, so we met as a group and discussed how we would allocate those funds. Next slide, please. So this is background information, and anytime we do a TIP amendment, we typically start with a slide like this, just explaining just what it is that we're doing. So the Transportation Improvement Program, that is the 4-year short-range fiscally constrained plan that contains all of the projects that are going to happen in the time period that it covers with their funding sources identified. Anytime we make changes to that plan, there is an amendment process that we go through. For little tiny amendments, it's an administrative one. For amendments that are more significant and meet certain criteria as identified in our public participation plan, the process is a little bit more formal. So you guys are seeing the ones today that meet the criteria for the more formal process. In all of these instances, it's because we're programming something new into the document. The one that is moving funds is considered new because it wasn't in that 4-year document that we're about to step into. So the ask today is just for this body to approve making these amendments so that we can proceed with the submittal process for the state of New Mexico. Next slide, please. So this is some description about each of those amendments. For the Calle Morocco project, that is an already identified project, but we have to go through this formal process because it's moving into a new STIP for just so we have it included in that document. This is a sidewalk project. It's going to add a sidewalk to an existing residential neighborhood that's going to provide connectivity between that neighborhood and an existing transit stop. The next two projects are design for projects for Doña Ana County that'll also be for pedestrian improvements. Next slide, please. Staff is recommending approval of these amendments. And and TPAC also, on the next slide, has indicated the same. And that concludes my presentation.
Anybody have any questions for Ann?
The Amparo Road Multi-Use, where is that at?
That one I'll have to look at the PRF form, which is in the backup. The location is identified. I'm just trying to remember it off the top of my
I
head.
just looked it up. It's in Chaparral.
Chaparral?
Mr. Chair.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
All right, moving to item number 4. Consider approval of amendments to the Regional Mobility Strategy RMS 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP, amended RMS 2050 MTP, RMS 2023 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program TIP, and RMS 2025-2028 TIP for the following Texas transit projects. 2A, program the Sun Metro Micro Transit Project using $900,000 of the fiscal year 2024 Community Project Funding Program in fiscal year 2025. B, program the Sun Metro Bus Replacement and Facility Enhancement Project using $32,900,000 of FTA 5339C low or no emission vehicle program funds in fiscal year 2025. And C, program the 2016 Bike Plan Update Project using $400,000 of the Areas of Persistent Poverty Grant Funds in fiscal year 2025. Again, Ann Young.
I'm so sorry I had to return your call.
Good morning again. If I can get the slides up for this one.
Yes. Okay, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I work for the government in meetings all day. And I'm a director for a state agency. What can we do? What can we do? Hey, hold on. We owe you, I think they owe you $15 or something like that.
All right, this looks like it. So this again is very similar to the last item that was considered, but this item pertains to those amendments that will be considered in the next Texas STIP adoption cycle, which is going to be in November. We're going to have 2 items related to amendments pertaining to that STIP amendment cycle. This one considers transit items, and item 5 will consider highway items. Next slide. So again, this is, pretty similar to the slide that you just saw. It explains what we're doing here, what a TIP is, that we are introducing proposed amendments to this TIP, and what the ask is here, which is that that this body approve those amendments. Next slide, please. So this slide contains the information about the projects that are being considered for this amendment. This is all new programmed projects. So these didn't exist before, and there's 2 of them, which are for Sun Metro, and the 3rd is for City of El Paso. So the first one is a community project funding program award that Sun Metro got for microtransit.
Yes, I can wait.
And the second is a low-no emissions program project that will procure low-no emissions buses. And the 3rd is a grant award that the City of El Paso got to update its adopted 2016 bike plan. And that is also from FTA, so it's considered a transit amendment. So it goes forward on the transit amendment cycle. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. All righty. So we are recommending the amendment to adopt all 3 projects into our TIP. And on the next slide, TPAC's recommendation was the same. And this concludes my presentation.
No, I was just gonna say thank you for bringing up the recommendations from TPAC. That was important for me, so I appreciate that those updates.
Did I hear you say that on item number 3, it was a grant that was applied for, and we're just programming the grant funds?
All 3 of them.
Yeah, all 3 are grant awards.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We've already won the money, so we can't spend it until we
Can we
do it.
approve it?
So please approve it.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve. I apologize.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Is there further discussion?
I'm so sorry about that.
All in favor? Any opposed?
You read them all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Item number 5, Consider approval of amendments to the Regional Mobility Strategy, RMS 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, amended RMS 2050 MTP, RMS 2023-2026 Transportation Improvement Program, and RMS 2025-2028 TIP for the following Texas highway projects. A, amend the Downtown Bicycle Improvements Phase 1 project to change the project limits in fiscal year 2025. B, program the PDN and Stanton International Bridges Project Development Study using $2 million of USDOT fiscal year 23 Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods Program funds in fiscal year 2025. C, program the Safe Routes to School Program project using $1.2 million of Safe Streets and Roads for All grant funds in fiscal year 2025. D, program the Vision Zero Education and Encouragement Campaign project using $1 million of Safe Streets and Roads for All grants fund in fiscal year 2025. E, program the Intersection Safety Improvement Program project using $1 million of Safe Streets or Roads for All grant funds in fiscal year 2025. F, program the North Yarborough Corridor Improvements Project using $5,980,298 of Safe Streets and Roads for All grant funds in fiscal year 2025. Program the Quick Build Demonstration Projects using $2,995,930 of Safe Streets and Roads for All grant in fiscal year 2025. And H, program the El Paso County Mobility Plan project using $900,000 of fiscal year 24 raised grant funds in fiscal year 2025. Please don't make me read this again.
Good morning again. If I can get the presentation slides for this friend. Sheesh. And this, as stated in the last item, covers those highway amendments for the next Texas STIP instance. It's a lot of amendments, but more than half of them pertain to the same grant award. So it's a little bit less of a mouthful than it looks like. All right, next slide, please. So again, background information slide. This one contains a little bit of specific information about the request. This kind of explains the grouping in addition to providing just the same general blurb about what this is and what we're doing and what we're asking you to do. So all but one of these amendments pertains to new grant awards. The first one, the Downtown Bicycle Improvement Program, is an amendment to change project limits for an existing project. So they're basically swapping out 3 blocks of that original bicycle improvement area, and they're putting in 3 different blocks. So same general amount of things being done, but if you're changing project limits, it raises it to the level of a formal amendment. We also have grant awards, one by the city of El Paso from Safe Streets for All, and that's 5 of the projects within this application, or this amendment packet. And then we also have an award for El Paso County. So next slide, please. So this is explaining, this is the first page of explanation for what we're doing. The first is that Downtown Bicycle Improvement Program. Second is a grant award for reconnecting communities for Stanton International Bridges Project Development Study. And then this is also the El Paso County's mobility plan project that it won a grant award for. The next slide is, I think, going to be all of the ones that are the SS4A program project. Okay, so next slide, please. This is the 5 projects that the city of El Paso will be pursuing under its Safe Streets for All grant award. And because they're all separate projects, they get programmed separately. So a couple of these are larger, kind of more traditional infrastructure type projects to improve the safety of existing streets. There's an infrastructure quick build project, there's an awareness campaign, and there's a safe routes for school plan. So just they're doing a lot with that money, and so we've got to program 5 projects for them. Next slide, please. Staff is recommending approval of all of these amendments. Next slide, please. TPAC is recommending the same. And this concludes the presentation.
I think it should be pointed out that this is new money coming in.
All of the money is new money, and the only thing that's not like new grants that the region has won is an existing project where we're moving some project limits for bicycle infrastructure.
But most of it's as the result of efforts to bring in new money to the region.
Yeah.
Your term quick build, that may be an oxymoron. Other than that, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Move to approve?
Second.
Have a motion to approve and a second. Further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
And if I could add on that one, Chair, what is really, really cool about this is that, based on the cities of El Paso having their Vision Zero plan, that made them eligible to apply for implementation grants. These are part of the implementation grants for the SS4A program, which is, it's a great thing because it is indeed new money and it's all focused on safety. So great thing. All right. Moving on then to item number 6. Consider approval of the TPAC Ad Hoc Committee recommendation for the programming of the carryover balances for Category 7 STP, Category 5 CMAC, Category 10 CRP, and Category 9 TASA funds. Again, and again.
Good morning once more. And if I could get the slides for this presentation. And this item is to explain an overall strategy. And then the specific items that would be programmed as a result of this strategy would be brought forward next month after provided that we get a successful vote. We received new funds in our region for Category 10 Carbon Reduction Program funds, so CRP. And because there is a strong relationship between projects that are eligible under that pot of money, it was quickly realized by the ad hoc committee that we needed to take a bit more of a holistic approach, because in programming projects in a lot of areas, augmenting existing or supplanting funding for existing, we managed to free up some money in Category 7, and we also were aware of a need to program down existing balances in Category 5, which is our CMAC funds. So the group met together and came up with a really solid strategy in order to make that money work the best it could for our region. All right, so next slide, please. So for the background here, here's some information about what the carbon reduction program is, and also a little bit of historical information. Last spring, TxDOT announced its statewide carbon reduction strategy, and that was the point at which MPOs could begin receiving these funds and working with this funds. Now, it should be noted that this money has been available on paper for a couple years, but we couldn't use it until we had that adopted statewide strategy. So we had a little bit of carryover at the beginning. So we wanted to make darn sure that we use that money, because after a certain point, money falls off. And then we decided that it would be prudent to ensure that we understood, because this was a new pot of money that had not been previously available, what exactly was eligible. So we sent to TxDOT TPP, which is the statewide division that oversees planning, we sent them a project list, and FHWA the same list, just to say, okay, so here's what we think is eligible. Can we get some concurrence? It took a while. We eventually got it in the winter. Some of that was some general advice, and some of that was, we'll tell you when you program it. We did a trial run with programming a year of HERO with it, last amendment cycle, and that was approved. So we felt like, okay, we're pretty confident that we are, that we kind of understand what we can do with this money now. And we felt at that point like, okay, we can go ahead and we can move forward with actually programming the balances of money that we have with our ad hoc committee. Next slide, please. So we also kind of midstream, there was some discussion, and I think that you guys might remember, some of you, an agenda item from around this time last year that discussed some things that the state of Texas was considering for doing with carryover funds, particularly in Category 5 CMAQ. These can be a little bit harder to get spent down because they do require the CMAQ analysis, which is kind of a complicated technical analysis of the potential air quality improvements resultant from your project. And a lot of smaller municipalities don't have the technical capacity to do that. So, it's not uncommon for there to be balances with this funding. And there were some other MPOs that had some kind of whopping balances. And so the state was doing some things that, or contemplating doing some things that would result in Cat 5 carryovers being utilized in other ways, like just taken out of that pot of money. And we wanted to make sure, since we had a pretty small, modest carryover, that before we went ahead and programmed things, that we knew for sure that wasn't going to happen. Because otherwise we would be out of fiscal constraint, because we would be relying on some carryover for some things we wanted to do in subsequent years, if that makes sense. So we did that, we got our information, we reconvened the committee this summer. And today's item is to consider just the overall strategy that they have decided upon, and provided the answer is yes, we will be bringing forward the individual projects that are being amended next month. Next slide, please. So ultimately, what was decided was to use this strategy that affected categories 10, 7, and 5 in a manner that resulted in a more comprehensive and robust network of non-motorized transportation facilities. That seemed to be best in keeping with the spirit of the money. This also enabled us to take some project elements out in certain cases away from out of category 10, category 7, which is our most flexible category of money. But we were able to use some of the eligible project elements for non-motorized pedestrian facilities. Funding it with other sources freed up some of that more flexible money that we could use for some regionally significant things, which I'll touch on, and then Eduardo will better explain a little later in the presentation. So ultimately, CRP brought about $19 million into our TIP during our TIP years. And this is going to make it so we can do some of the things that we've been wanting to do with our more safety-oriented, or safety and more air quality-oriented projects. We can move those forward more quickly and do more with it. So we had several meetings, and this stuff was looked over very, very carefully to decide what was equitable and what best would meet the needs of our region for these available funds. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of an overview of kind of the broad nature of the changes. So we had about 19 million in new Cat 10 over the time period. Basically, it's 3 million a year, but we had 9 million that we needed to draw down on the top of that. We had about 6 million in category 5, and then we were able to free up a little bit in category 7. So this tells you the information about just what we were able to do new wholesale and what we were able to augment. And in every single case, we were able to do some new things and augment some existing things. In category 5, we were able to take some projects that had local funding contributions in excess of the 20% required match and move that all into federal funding. That was one of the big things that we were able to do to help the entities in our region. For category 7, we were able to free up funds towards 2 pretty high priority regional endeavors. In category 9, we had a little bit of remaining balance from a previous project called for TAZA, which is Transportation Alternative Set Aside, and we were able to fund non-motorized transportation infrastructure improvements in Horizon in El Paso County. Next slide, please. So next, after we get through this, we're going to show just what, and this is in your backup too, but we're going to show it to everybody, just what exactly it would be proposed to change in what year. We are recommending approval of the strategy. And then TPAC is also on the next slide recommending approval of the strategy. And what they would like to see also is there's some unobligated balance, I think, in particularly in category 10 in the later years of the program, and they would like to see in the future a project call for those unobligated funds to introduce new projects that are for non-transportation, or I'm sorry, non-motorized type infrastructure, and then and introduce some new projects within the TIP years. And then before voting, we do have the a spreadsheet with the strategy that's able to show everybody. If we can get that pulled up. And hopefully it's somewhat legible at the scale.
So while we get that on the screen. So what this ad hoc committee did is really important in the sense that, well, the initial idea, like Ann said, was to take this new category of funds and see how we could insert them into projects, existing projects, so that we could pull out categories 5 or 7. As Ann said, Cat 7 is our most flexible category. But while doing that exercise, it was necessary to look not just at the opportunity for category 10, but if you're freeing up 5 and 7 and so on, it was important to look at all the different categories that, holistically. The other important thing that I was going to touch on at the remarks at the end of the meeting, but there is a big push from the TxDOT side for us to program our funds. They told us the goal is to program 100% of your funds every year. I mean, it's impossible to hit 100%, right? But make a push so that we program everything. Now, of course, we don't want to program and spend money just because we have it, right? We've got to select the better projects and so on. Their push has a lot to do because at the state level, there is a big carryover, right? And that creates a problem for the state in terms of at the end of every fiscal year when they look at the redistribution of funds and the reallocation of funds. So if Texas doesn't spend their money, we can't go after additional money from other states that did not spend it, which happens all the time. So if, the feds are going to say, well, if you can't even spend your money, so why are you asking for more, right? So there's a big push, and I guess it does make sense. But we definitely need to be, very vigilant in terms of programming. And we've done, the El Paso NPO has done historically a pretty good job. There's another big NPO on the opposite side of I-35. I'm not going to say it's Houston, but it's Houston, right? I mean, they have right now tremendous, huge balances for whatever reason that they haven't been able to program projects. And that creates, for a program the size of Houston, that creates a lot of issues. Okay, so you want to explain this?
Sure. And what you're going to see here represents everything for 2025, but with its changes highlighted in red. And then over on the right, there's some annotation about what exactly it is that was done here, what changes. So as you can see, there are changes that impact categories or all of the available funding categories. And then for category 9, which is the TAZA fund, this is the only year where you're going to see changes because past this year, that those projects would be subject to another project call, which several entities submitted projects for. So what's notable here is you can see the added projects, which are, we've got 2 of the pedestrian projects that were mentioned, and then the 2 regional priorities that were discussed are also contained within this year, and that'd be a contribution, a local contribution to the Downtown 10 project, as well as potential supplemental federal funds for an anticipated grant application that the MPO would be leading for the region for the deck park next phase. Yeah.
So on those 2, let me explain. The 3.9 is something that has been pledged in the past. It's part of the funding formula for the Downtown 10 Phase 1 project, right? That's for the TxDOT project. And that was pledged some time ago. The second one is a new element, which is many of you have heard the conversation about submitting a grant application for the design portion of the Deck Plaza project, right? So this is an application that the city of El Paso went for last year. Unfortunately, the city was not selected, but the feedback that was received from USDOT regarding that was very good. So even some recommendations to how to improve the application. So as a region, we've been talking about this and given the interest on the Deck Plaza project to resubmit for the Reconnecting Communities program, again, that application. The dollar amount for the grant is 10 million, the total amount. But in this case, that program provides only 50% of federal funds. In other words, if the ask is for 10, only 5 will come from that project. However, they also open the door to supplement the $5 million with other federal programs, as long as the total amount does not exceed 80%, right? Which is to keep the typical balance of federal grants 80-20. So that's where the $3.75 million of STP come in, right? So the part of the recommendations, and as part of the work that the committee did, was to carve out that 3.75 million, which is 100%. 3.75, 3 million of that is federal, and the other is the corresponding 20% match. So with the 5 that we get, but hopefully we would get from the RCP program, the federal funds, plus the 3, that adds up to the 8 million, or the 80%, right? So that's the purpose of that line item there. If these recommendations are approved, then that would become part of the formula that would be included in the application when we submit it. If we're selected, well, then of course, then we would do the needed tip amendments and so on. So right now, for that project and everything that you see here in these spreadsheets as part of the work of the ad hoc committee, nothing is programmed yet. So this is just sort of like a plan. It's a blueprint, right? Now, individual tip amendments or individual projects would be added to the tip starting next month, or as needed. So I hope I didn't confuse you much with that. But
Excellent. So the black is programmed.
Yes, black is existing.
You just said nothing is programmed, so the black.
I'm sorry, no, none of the red stuff, none of the ad hoc committee's recommendations for changes have been programmed yet.
But I thought you said you were gonna move money out of category 7 into 10, or move eligible projects.
Yeah, that's part of the strategy.
How does that show up here?
Okay, so well, there's certain examples within this year and then some of the other years where you do show, for instance, on John Hayes, you can see that it's $21 million total project cost. Formerly, that was all out of category 7. Now it is divided between categories 7 and 10. So you've got the pedestrian elements of that project now coming out of the CRP funds. You can also see examples of one of the other strategies that was alluded to during the slides, which is that we've taken local contribution in excess of grant match, and we've moved them into projects. You can see here that we've got that for City of Horizon Cities Transit Plaza, where it was to be 100% grant funded, and now it is going to be funded with category 7. And you also see for the traffic management center phases that are proposed for 2025, you see amounts come out of local contribution and into category 5. We did have to leave some of that project's elements in local contribution because during previous discussions with FHWA, some of the project elements weren't eligible, so we can't move them. But so the total project costs aside from the new additions have remained static, but we're able to free up funding by instead of having everything funded out of one pot of money, have it funded in part out of some of the new money that's become available. And in certain cases with existing balance. Does that
All right.
help it kind of?
Well, yeah, so this
Okay.
is your recommendation, but we
Yes.
don't have a copy of what it used to be. So,
Well, what it used to be would be if you look in the project cost, that's going to show what most of it is. And then if you look in the very, very right kind of annotation in the margins, you can see what change has been applied in this recommended strategy.
I got it. So on category 10, why haven't there ever been a project call for that money? Or why are we in this situation?
Well, that one, and that's a question that the TPAC ad hoc committee had too. When initially we picked this strategy because we were under the initial impression that when the funds were going to become available, we were going to need to act like very, very quickly in a shorter time period than a project call would generally take, because that can be 90 days just to decide what your strategy is going to be before you would begin the amendment process to program things into your document. So that's like, a 6-month time period. So initially, we were under the impression that in order to get this money programmed, what we were going to need to do is just basically take things out of Cat 5, put them in Cat 10, and then worry about what to do with the Cat 5 balance we created later. So we began the process under that assumption, and then just as the situation evolved, it turns out we probably would have had time to do it the other way, but it just, unfortunately, we didn't have the benefit of hindsight when we had to make these decisions.
So going forward, where there'll be a call?
That is actually one of TPAC's the ad hoc committee and TPAC's recommendations, is that we do that because we don't have 100% of the CRP funds programmed, especially in the later years of the TIP. And TPAC is recommending that we do a project call for those remaining funds.
And to that point, that is, the right thing to do, because what we're doing right now is just, pulling eligible items so that we can use and program category 10, the CRP, which is fine. But it really does not, philosophically does not meet the intent, which is really to look for good projects that actually reduce, carbon emissions, right? And do something for the environment. Right now, the initial push, as Ann explained, was just, we need to get the program. So out of existing projects that are already programmed, what can we pull out that is eligible so that we can use those funds? But yes, we will be looking into a call for projects and really looking for projects that do, what the program is intended really to do.
Yes, and to add to that, per the adopted UTP and the proposed next UTP, this is something that's going to be, it's an ongoing source of funds. It's not going to expire after 2028. So this is something to where we are anticipating receiving about $3 million per year on a continuing basis into the future. So this is something, you know, it's sometimes there's growing pains and sometimes you're building the plane as you fly it, which is what we were experiencing here. But then once this becomes part of our ongoing rhythm, it's going to be relatively easy and straightforward to do project calls for one or more fiscal years as intended.
Chair, I was just curious, now that that's a recommendation, do you need a directive from the TPB to bring back some form of process or policy, or is that something that you all are comfortable doing on your own?
We weren't necessarily seeking that today, but if you wanted to include that in part of your motion, that, you know, we program these funds, and then we also in particular want to call out the part of TPAC's recommendation that we establish project calls for this program to cover the remaining balances and look at, well, that's going to be folded into the next MTP adoption process. But if we want to very specifically call that out in this body's decision, that's absolutely something that we can do. And
I was just wanting to make sure you had an avenue to get that done. So you're going to do it through the MTP. Is there any other changes that you can foresee as a result of these remaining funds and state legislative changes?
Not that every other pot of money would kind of be subject to, which is that, you know, we're at the mercy ultimately of the state, and each year in the UTP there can be, because each UTP covers, you know, several years, and then generally speaking, the very beginning of that tends to be pretty stable with what you've seen before, but then once you get like 2 or 3 years out, the money starts fluctuating. Just in anticipation of, you know, things could change. So the further out we program, the more uncertainty gets introduced. But this funding avenue, we don't anticipate simply going away. I'm not aware of anything that would imply that. Just it would, you know, for instance, in 25 UTP, we had lost some money in certain categories as a result of, you know, say San Antonio hitting non-attainment for category 5, and just across the board a little teeny bit, the fact that there is now another MPO in Texas in Eagle Pass, so the same amount of money is now getting divided up into more pie wedges.
But you can foresee like projects that are ready to be added, or do you need to select like an alternative in case like other projects either come under budget? And so like the carryovers, that's my concern, is like, are we prepared to make sure we're using all the money before we lose it? And do you have an avenue to find that alternative project in the event something else falls off?
Generally speaking, what we do in situations like that, because there is always going to be a little bit of adjustments and fluctuations. If we get happy news from the state, if for some reason we're in deflation instead of inflation, so everything actually got done for way less, what we would do in that instance, if it was unexpected funds kind of mid-cycle, we would do a project call. That's what we did when we got happy UTP numbers in the winter of 2022. We had unexpected balances to program, and so an ad hoc committee was selected and those balances were programmed. When it's just more, we find out we're going to have more money just by dint of the regular process, we would likely resolve that in the next TIP revision for near-term stuff, and then in the next MTP revision looking further out.
I don't think it's necessary to have. It seems like you have a process in place. Thank you. I move to approve. I'm sorry.
I would ask, just piggybacking off the question and then how you're explaining the process, is that the MPO would come back to this board and really explain that process, because we went through a very rigorous practice of the decision lens, and that really ranked a lot of the projects.
Yes.
But that what we saw in 2022 was not necessarily a mirror image of what happened in decision lens. So if we could go over that process again, I think it would be very educational to this board, and then also help the cities and communities to provide the right projects so that we are selecting those that meet the criteria for all of our categories.
Can you explain decision?
No, absolutely, and that's very timely because we're gonna be pretty soon beginning the process of adopting our next MTP. And that was the time that the decision lens was used and although the projects were ranked was in the development of the last MTP. So since we're about to begin that process again, that's very timely to discuss with this body what the project selection process and criteria.
Right. But also as a reminder, yes, we use the decision lens as a tool, but it's not the only only parameter. I mean, there's a lot of other qualitative elements that we brought to the board and to make the selection of project and made it into what is still the RMS 2020 strategic plan. But to the point that we've been discussing, yeah, that's why it is important to have projects, well into the future, right? So that as we start moving, and if there's more money coming in with one specific year through the UTP or whatever, then we can accelerate projects, right? So that's we've been able to do that as well, and with, if you remember the big projects like with the county, with John Hayes and Tierra del Este that we were, phasing them, well, we're able now to let them into one and just accelerate it. So that's also, we've been able to work with our cash flow in that way so that we're programming and, getting the priority projects for all the stakeholders that are programmed, getting them done sooner.
Representative Canales?
Oh, just to add to that, the MTP process is where we have the opportunity to introduce larger projects also and more, and projects that would affect our determination of air quality, conformity, and all of the transportation modeling that we have to do. Because as you guys are no doubt aware, because of the exercise that we had to go through for the amendment this year, it's a lot harder to add things midstream and change things midstream than it is during the development of an MTP when you're going to have to go through that exercise anyhow for everything. So that's the point at which we would suggest introducing the larger new projects.
Sure.
So this is a recommendation coming from this ad hoc committee of TPAC. Did it then go to TPAC to make the recommendation to us, or are we getting the recommendation directly from the ad hoc?
This item was presented to TPAC, who agreed to advance the ad hoc committee's recommendation to this body.
When was the committee created?
The committee was initially created this past, I want to say March, but I'd have to look specifically back at just when exactly. So we created it, it paused, it re-met over the summer, came up with its final recommendation, and then it became ready. That work was done in the month of July. We made everybody come to 2-hour meetings every Wednesday, and they were very gracious about it. And that was the process by which we were able to develop the set of recommendations that's brought today.
Yeah, kudos to the people who, I don't know who served on the committee, but kudos to them. I'm sure it was a lot of work.
Couple of them. We got Terry, we've got Art. Trying to see if I see anybody
And to
else.
staff who I'm sure spent a lot of time supporting them as well.
Yeah, Joaquin was.
The city.
Yes.
This is, I only wish that, and it's my fault as well for not necessarily like following TPAC as closely as I could. I wish that we had seen this before today. Like that's a lot of work from March and then meetings every week in June or July. And, we're seeing just the final recommendation here, but I wish that we had known that this was going on throughout that process so that we could.
Yeah, noted. And that's something that we can try and make sure that we come up with ways to maybe provide progress updates or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, and then again, I mean, I understand the process it went through. I have projects I would love to submit for a Category 10 call. I wish we could have gone that route. I understand why it didn't.
Yeah, and in the future, we absolutely will.
All right, and then I wanted to ask, so the downtown deck plaza design contribution, it's listed as sponsor MPO. MPO will be submitting that that grant application this time around?
It is, you know, a discussion point right now with all the different partners involved, with the city, the county, I mean, at different levels, but the deadline to submit the application is September 30th. So, you know, we've got to move. If we're gonna, you know, take advantage of that opportunity, we've got to move quickly and make those decisions.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, city applied, I know, for reconnecting communities for this last year.
Right.
Wasn't awarded. If the deadline is September 30th, and the idea is that MPO will submit, do we expect to see that on our TPB agenda for next
Oh, of
month?
course. Yeah, absolutely. The things that we haven't brought it up, and well, I mean, we're explaining it here because there's still a lot of you know, loose ends. And so I did not want to put it here as an item, as an action item yet. Because, you know, not knowing, I mean, we still need to figure out the match, you know, where is that 20% going to come from and so on. There's been some ideas and initial conversations, but nothing has been set yet. So yeah, but definitely, you know, before submitting the application, we need to get the green light from policy board.
And then on downtown 10, the 3.9 that's listed, is that, I'm thinking it was maybe like April, there was you said this was previously pledged.
Yeah, no, that was
Yeah.
part of last year's cycle in the UTP.
Last year's cycle?
Yeah. Yeah, this was pledged, looking at Raul or Tomas, it was
23.
in 23. Okay. Yeah, it was for the 23 cycle. That's right.
So it was pledged but never programmed anywhere.
Not yet.
And this
So-
would be the mechanism through which to program. I mean, not this exactly, but when it comes back to us later.
Exactly right. So it hasn't been formally programmed into the tip because we were waiting for the UTP, the fiscal year 25 UTP to be approved, which is what happened yesterday. So in that approval of the UTP, the $500 million for phase one is now in the UTP as of yesterday. So that the 500 million includes, you know, category 12, 2, 4, and the 3.9 of Cat 7.
Okay, I understand. So this is, yeah, it's no longer, it's not 503,900,000. This is rolled into that 500 million that was.
What number?
For the downtown, or
Yeah, sorry, it's not 500 million plus this, it is.
This is
rolled
part of
into
that. Yeah, this is part of the kit of parts that makes that.
Understood.
And again, it was pledged a year and a half or 2 years ago, right?
By a vote of this month.
Exactly.
Okay. And then just wanted to call out one that I like. It's not on the screen because it's down one page. The addition of Hero into Cat 10 for 2026.
Yes, and we have Hero in certain years in Cat 10, and we have it in certain years in Cat 7, just kind of depending on, you know, what else was going on that year funding wise.
Yep, understood. I mean, I think if we can keep it out of Cat 7 and keep that free for other things, it's a perfect use of
Yes,
Cat.
the ad hoc committee was in agreement with that for absolutely. And we did find out that it was an eligible use because there was a formal amendment brought before this body for the May cycle to program the Hero funds in, I believe it was 2025 with Cat 10. And part of that endeavor was just A, to do it, but B, also just to make sure that it was considered eligible, that it survived the amendment process and we didn't get a bounce back saying like, no, do something different with it. In that case, and if you remember from the meeting where that was approved, the motion was do it as 10, and if it doesn't fly as 10, resubmit as 7.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So with this additional 3.9 million, how much delta are we still short for our match?
For phase one, we're not sure. We're moving forward with 500 million. That 3.9 is part of the 500 million.
So is it funded? I guess that's.
Yes, that's right.
And then on the deck park, is that a full match or is that a partial match? That 3.75?
Yeah, it's part of part of the $10 million, right?
Is
So,
that fully funded now?
I'm sorry?
Is it fully funded now?
But we still need to figure out, how to get the match. The $2 million out of the 10, right, that we would be applying for, there is, the 20% match. Part of it, and that's what we still need to figure out.
That's not this?
No, that,
What is this?
well, the 3.75 would take $3 million federal money to get 8. And the 0.75 is part of the match that we still need to figure out how to get it.
Say that again.
Okay.
I'm sorry. The 3 million is,
Right. So the 3.75 million that we're putting here is 80% of that, which is the federal portion, is 3 million, right? So that federal portion of 3 million with the 5 that we would get from the federal program adds to the 8 million, which is 80%. Right? Right. So, right. So, I mean, it's just playing with the numbers, right? But at the end of the day, if we apply for $10 million under this program, we would get 5 from the program. We would use 3.75 from our STP program, right? But then we still need to figure out the rest of the match. Okay? So at the end of the day, we still need to find 20% overall. Right, exactly.
So just to clarify then, if that match isn't programmed anywhere, not from, there's no match from us, from this body, there's no match from the city or the county or anybody else that's
Not
programmed
yet.
currently.
Not
Yeah.
yet, but we need to figure out, where we're gonna get that.
If that match doesn't happen, would there be a reprogram of this funding?
We find something else to do with that money.
So even if, let's say that between now and then we get the commitment from, the local partners to get the match, right? We submit the application, there's no guarantee that we're gonna get it, right? So if we get it, which hopefully we will, right? Then we would do the appropriate amendments, we would program the 3.75 in the tip and that becomes part of the formula. But for now, all we need is to get the green light from the board, specifically for this, to be able to use that, to pledge that as part of the application. If we're not selected, well then, this goes back to the pot.
Right, but I don't even necessarily mean not being selected, it's even if, we can't apply if the match doesn't come from somewhere, correct?
Right.
And we'll theoretically know that
Yes,
as soon as the next TPB meeting,
exactly,
that's the
absolutely,
September 30 deadline.
absolutely.
Further questions? Do I have a motion?
Chair, Rep. Hernandez already made a motion to approve. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none? Oh. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, thank you. All right, item 7, consider adoption of midpoint performance period targets for CMAQ traffic congestion measures, peak hour excessive delay, and percent of non-single occupancy vehicles travel measures. And we have Sonia Perez with the presentation on this. Sonia?
Yes, good morning. Can you let me know if you all can hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, Sonia Perez, Transportation Planner for El Paso MPO. And can I have the presentation up, please? While we wait for the presentation, we are at the midpoint of the second performance period for the reporting of performance measures for CMAQ traffic congestion measures. These are the PM3 measures. At this point, the states and MPOs are required to report the actual 2023 performance and progress towards achieving the 2023 targets set 2 years ago. And four-year targets for 2025 may be adjusted based on the 2 additional years of data available. Next slide, please. Review is to refresh our minds on the background on the National Performance Measures reporting periods. The periods are 4-year timeframes during which progress is measured to assess performance with respect to the baseline condition and to track progress towards the achievement of the targets at the midpoint and at the end of the time period. The first performance period ended in October 1st, 2020, and the second one will end in 2026. As I mentioned, we are currently at the midpoint of the second performance period. So the next slide, please. Specifically for CMAQ-related measures, FHWA has established several measures to assess traffic congestion and on-road mobile source emissions. Today, I'll go over the traffic congestion measures. I'll go over what was presented at TPAC and the recommendation from TPAC. On-road emissions will be presented at the next opportunity since we're still going over some methodology revisions and analyzing the latest data. Next slide, please. The traffic congestion measures are different from other measures such as safety and emission measures in which these are not aggregated by a state to report just one number. These measures are reported by urbanized area. Therefore, the El Paso MPO has to coordinate with both states agencies, Texas and New Mexico DOT, to agree upon a single unified target for the MPO urbanized area. So the traffic congestion measures are PHEAD, or peak hour excessive delay, and non-single occupancy vehicle travel measure. Next slide, please. PHEAD, this is the annual hours of peak hour excessive delay per capita that occurs within an applicable urbanized area. PHEAD is calculated based on a threshold of travel time at 20 miles per hour or 60% of the posted speed limit travel time, whichever is greater, and will be measured in 15-minute intervals. Peak travel hours are defined as 6 to 10 a.m. local time on weekday mornings, and the weekday afternoon period that was selected for the second performance period is from 3 to 7 p.m. The total excessive delay metric will be weighted by vehicle volumes and occupancy. So in the next slide, we have the data that has been provided by the Texas Transportation Institute. These are estimated based on travel time data. Everything in green was what we had previously at the 2022 back 2 years ago, I'm sorry, that we set these targets. And the pink color are the new data we have now available. The original targets that were previously adopted were 9 hours for 2023 and 10 hours for 2025. Looking at the previous data and most current data, we see a lot of fluctuation over the years. And now again in 2022, we can observe a decrease and again an increase in 2023. Can you go back to the next slide, please? Here in the graph, you can see better the fluctuation. The desired trend is to reduce PHEAD. However, more detailed analysis is needed to understand how projects influence this measure. The MPO is proposing to keep a 4-year target as 10 hours for 2025. And for future performance periods, the MPO is looking into using the travel demand model to forecast and obtain a more reliable target. And the travel demand model that is currently being developed for our next MTP will include these metrics so that we can obtain the outputs from our 12-month model and be able to forecast better how projects influence this metric. Next slide, please. The second traffic control measure is non-SOV travel. This may include travel via carpool, vanpool, public transportation, commuter rail, walking or bicycling, and it also includes travel avoided by telecommuting. There are three options to calculate the modal share. However, the American Community Survey is recommended for consistency with other MPOs and states. Next slide, please. Here, the MPO is using the latest available American Community Survey results to establish the targets. And looking at the 5-year estimates for years 2018 to 2022, approximately 22% of commuting trips qualified as non-SOV travel in 2022. This, as you can see, is an increase of approximately 1% a year since 2019. And all the modes of transportation don't vary a lot except for telecommuting. So telecommuting is what's driving our 1% increase each year. Can we go to the next slide, please? Here in the graph, we can see the previous targets set initially for the second performance period were 20% for both the 2-year and 4-year targets. And now, based on the latest data, we see that we're no longer, these targets are lower than the current data. So the El Paso MPO is proposing to increase the target to 22% for the 4-year target.
That's right.
Although the desired trend is to increase the non-SOV, at this point, MPO staff recommends to maintain current mode shares. So that we have at the actual data 2022 is 22%. So we're recommending to keep that in for the 4-year target in 2025. So, and CPAC as well as staff is recommending to adopt the 4-year targets for PHEAD and non-SOV as presented. To answer any questions if there's any.
Again, if I may, these are targets that are part of the federal planning and programming process, right? They've been asking us to do, and we brought to you the other targets: safety, infrastructure condition, pavement, and. But these are a little more complicated in the sense that these are measures of travel and congestion, right? So obviously, when you look at the data, COVID obviously, is what it's affecting some of the historical data, right? So if you look at the numbers for 2020 on the PHEAD, people were not traveling, so there was very little congestion, so that was artificially low. As we started coming out of the pandemic, then we're sort of like regaining the trend, right? But again, setting these targets is, there is no major penalty if we don't meet the targets. I mean, it's just something that is helping us, guide and try to track and measure, the impact on that from our projects, that we implement in the TIP and the projects that we have in our long range plan.
One of these days, we're gonna have to quit blaming everything on COVID, but.
So far.
Does anybody have any questions? So it looks like to me, we're just moving our target to meet what we're doing.
So again, like Sonia said, for this non-SOV travel, the higher the target, the better, right? So it means that we are using, cars less, right? Whether it's telecommuting or other modes of transportation, right? But again, I still think that the COVID impact is what is influencing the telecommuting, right? The fact that not everybody came back to work at the office like, we did pre-COVID.
Okay, further questions? Do I have a motion for this adoption?
So moved.
I have a motion in a second. Reluctantly. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, item number 8, consider authorizing the executive director to amend task order number 2 pursuant to the interlocal cooperation agreement between the El Paso MPO and UTEP for assistance in travel demand modeling, air quality conformity, and public involvement activities, and other activities included in the El Paso MPO Unified Planning Work Program to revise the maximum amount payable from $78,500 to $116,833. So this task order is specifically, what we're bringing this task order, this amendment to the task order, just to revise the budget for it. The initial task order was had a budget through the month of August, even though the task order, the term goes all the way to December. So what we're doing here is supplementing the budget so that we can cover it from September through December. One of the reasons why we're doing this is we want to bring one person on board as part of the MPO staff. But we're not able to do it, so we cannot be, we need to be covered under the current agreement. And hopefully, we won't be utilizing this task order all the way to December. Hopefully, we'll be able to bring somebody on board full-time to the MPO staff before then. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Any discussion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Have a motion, second. I have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, item 9, consider authorizing the executive director to execute task order number 6 with a maximum funding amount of $110,000 pursuant to the interlocal cooperation agreement between El Paso MPO and UTEP for the development and technical support of the Transportation Improvement Program TIP and project request form PRF web applications and technical support and enhancement to the El Paso MPO multimodal web tool. So again, this is a continuation of the work that UTEP has done for us. A lot of this is maintenance, but also to continue the developing the applications. Here on the summary sheet, there's a summary of all the prior task orders that we have issued on this topic, so that you see, the percent that has been utilized. So with that, yeah, we would like to ask for your approval to get this task order.
Is there discussion on this item? Do I have a motion?
Motion to authorize.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
All right. So now moving on to reports and discussion. Item number 10 is announcement of transit service adjustments in 2025. We have Jose Landeros. Do we have Jose on the line? Do we have? All right. So I don't know if anybody can take over
I
for.
can tell you a little bit about it. Well, or here's a good. So, the El Paso County recently formed the local LPADs, local public transit.
Government corporation.
Okay. And so Socorro, they were servicing transit to Socorro. Socorro opted not to join the transit. And so the service modifications is that route will no longer be going to Socorro. That's the main part of it. He may have wanted to touch on other things.
So that's part of it. Good morning, Harrison Ford, the El Paso MPO. So the part that we know about is that the Sun Metro route that serves Socorro will be ending at the end of the calendar year. The LGC is also looking at their routes that they operate or that the county operates that serve Socorro and what changes should be made to those operations. So we don't have specifics on that yet. The LGC is getting guidance and a recommendation from TTI on what those changes will be. And they could be as little as changing the frequency of service. They could be removing stops in the city of Socorro or limiting the number of stops in Socorro to as far as changing routes so that they're not serving Socorro in any way. So that's a recommendation that's going to come from TTI to the LGC. That's actually planned for their board meeting next week. So, well, it was scheduled for this week and then it got delayed, so it'll happen sooner or later. So that was the purpose of the item, to inform the board that there are service changes coming. And those are especially going to impact the city of Socorro.
We had also envisioned in the incentives conversation is creating city policies so that private sector developers that are looking to, let's say, modernize buildings can also get tax breaks. So it's not necessarily spending money we already have. It's a little more complicated. It's policy change at the city so that these types of facility improvements get special deals at downtown locations or the area between downtown and the Bridge of the Americas. So it's just another layer of
Omar.
Thank you, Omar.
Chairman?
The point I wanted to make is that although it was a Sun Metro route, it was under contract from the county. We were only providing the service, so I don't want it to sound like Sun Metro just stopped running it, so just to be clear.
Thank you all. So, Rudy Cruz, City Representative for the City of Socorro. This item was brought to the City Council twice, I believe, Mr. Calvo, and I brought it back. I know my colleagues have voted twice against it. At this time, being that I do represent the City of Socorro and the community, I have to be a team player. And now I have to support the efforts of my colleagues on the table. I was sad to see that we opted out of the LGC. But at the same time, I also have to realize that I have to be a team player and look out for what the best interest of my community is. At this time, my colleagues have expressed that this was the best route to take. In addition, my conversations with commissioners as well as Mr. Calvo, I hope that the LGC can consider that for municipalities, leave that door open for us if at any point we do want to join and we fall on our face or on our backsides, whatever comes first. I want to keep the doors open so that we can continue to work with you all. But I've tried to be as diplomatic as possible in our efforts to share the information. And I feel that there's been a strong campaign where perception is everything. And I know that the campaign that's been running right now is the county or the public transit system doesn't want to look bad and say, well, we cut services off. So they spent quite a bit of ink and paper and social media ads stating that your city of Socorro no longer wants to provide services. Again, in the most diplomatic way, I think the message should be, yes, although we did cut the MOU or the agreement, services have now been transferred over to the city of Socorro. Again, I know that there's laws that you all have to abide by in providing this information to the city of Socorro. but at the same time, I don't want it to be a goodbye. I want it to be a see you later maybe. I also want to stress that I feel the LGC could have taken a better stance on being more formal and what were the formal attempts to sit with the city of Socorro other than being placed on an agenda item in a city council meeting? Did we ever come back and revisit, hey, Socorro, what is it that you're looking for? Is it its price? Is it too much? Is it the shelters? Is it the bus stops? I don't know if those attempts were ever made. Again, these are conversations that can happen, at a later time, maybe a more intimate meeting of some sort. But I do ask that the LGC do keep the doors open and establish some type of policy for municipalities to join in afterwards. If we don't join today or tomorrow, it could be at a later date. And that's all I wanted to say, and I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
And I don't want to speak for the LGC, but I am an ex officio member on the board. So I can tell you that the conversation at those board meetings has been around how can we convince Socorro to participate, because it's so much more beneficial. The operations of the LGC will be more beneficial to the entire region if all of the entities are participating. So my perception is that the LGC is open to that in the future.
Thank you, and if I may add, I've caught many bees in my life, and honey's always worked. I think the LGC has taken another route, and but again, Socorro's always open to sit down with you all at the table and meet and discuss further. We've seen the meetings, and I feel sometimes we feel attacked, but I'm more than happy to sit with you at the table and invite other members of the city who hold the authority to be able to make certain decisions. I want to keep the doors open with you all.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's part of, we're not the LGC, but yes, we have a.
But you have representatives at the seat, at the table, yes.
Any further discussion on this matter? Congo?
All right, so item 11, Executive Director's Report. Just wanted to brief you. These two meetings were held yesterday, so it's really fresh off the press. The first one, the TTC meeting yesterday, I think the big item for us was the approval of the fiscal year 25 UTP that we discussed earlier. So some of the highlights specifically for us, phase one of the Downtown 10 project, as we discussed earlier, $500 million is now approved in the UTP, so you will see a TIP amendment now to program that money into our TIP very soon. I don't know if we're looking at it, Harrison or Art, for September next month
Yeah.
for the Downtown 10.
We'll discuss that.
Okay, all right. And so that was one. The other highlight for us is the inclusion of phase two of the Borderland Expressway, $147 million to complete phase two. So that's a good thing, and that project is scheduled for fiscal year 25 next month. And again, as we have discussed, nothing is perfect, right? So those are good pieces of news. We're advancing some our projects, even though it's in phases. The bad news is that for this year, we did not receive any additional Category 12. But again, we are working with the Texas administration and the commission now that the fiscal year 26 cycle begins, right? So yesterday they completed the 25, but now the development of 26 begins. And so, my personal recommendation to you all is that, we continue working with the administration of the commission and continue, meeting with them and showing, that we have our priorities established, that there is general consensus about these priorities, and to, we need to keep the pressure, right? Otherwise, we're not going to be heard. And and our projects are not going to be moving forward. So with that, that's what happened at the commission meeting yesterday. The second one was another meeting that we had yesterday. That was with the senior leadership of the TxDOT administration with all the MPO executive directors. Not all of them were there in attendance, but we got a good number. So it was a pretty interesting discussion about what can TxDOT do better with MPOs. And of course, there's MPOs of all sizes and flavors and colors and so on. But in general terms, we discussed agreements, for example, for the local governments. It takes a really long time to get these agreements done. I complained a lot about the conformity process, right? So TxDOT is part of the consultative partners, right? But I think it's more of a complaint with Federal Highway and FTA that the process really takes a really long time to get done. And just other things that we were able to talk. So it is very good that we're having those discussions with TxDOT and the other MPOs so that they understand what we're, all the things that we're going through and how can we improve. And again, communication is vital. So that's all I have. I don't know if you have any comments or questions. That's all I have.
Anybody have anything for us? No, thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Being no further items on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
We're adjourned. That's, we not miss it.
Thank you. Marisol. Marisol.